Together, we will make America great again.
RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Well, good evening, everyone. And, of course, my friends, welcome back to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Den Rich, good to see you still subscribed over there. James over there on YouTube said that YouTube unsubscribed him. Since YouTube allowed me back on the platform, they have been mass unsubscribing people from the channel. Not super concerned with it. I'm glad that somebody is over there watching on YouTube, but when I got banned initially 5 years ago, most everybody went to the other platforms, and that's totally cool with me. I got a big fam over there on Pilled, big fam over there on Rumble, big fam over there on Getter, and although I got a lot of people following the account on X, not as many people watching, but that's fine. That's fine. We got people we are reaching all around the world, and my friends, we have a lot to discuss. As you can see from the thumbnail, James Comey is not out of the legal woods yet. In fact, things are getting worse. Yes. Todd Blanche, I gotta say, I really had a lot of high hopes for Todd Blanche, and I felt since the very beginning that all of the attacks on Todd Blanche were coordinated for a reason. Because now that he has the reins at the DOJ, things are up and running. Jerome Powell is a douche because that man wants to stay out of prison. So do me a favor, sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, and we're going to be right back after this very brief word from our sponsor. So the way people think about retirement is changing. For years, it was pretty simple. You just bought stocks, bonds, and you hope that the market did its job over time. But with everything that's happening in the economy today, rising inflation, global uncertainty, some investors are starting to realize that they might need a more diversified approach. And that's where assets like crypto and precious metals are really starting to come into the conversation. Not as speculation, but as a way to make a thoughtful allocation as part of a long-term strategy. So with a crypto IRA, with My Digital Money, you can now invest in both crypto and precious metals using a structured retirement account. Your assets are going to be kept in cold storage, so they're offline and protected from any online threats. And they're also held with a regulated U.S. custodian and supported by a U.S.-based team, people you can actually talk to. So if you want to know how it works, find out by going to mydigitalmoney.com, or you can just click the link below, or you can even give them a call, and they will speak English. 833-636-2008. And if you want to ask about their promotion on how you can get up to $200 based on your investment, just enter RedPill78 in the promo code field when you see it on the website to be eligible. And when you support my sponsors, you support this channel. All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you very much to everyone who is here with us on every single platform. Doesn't matter where you're at. I appreciate each and every one of you, and you guys know that that's 100% true. You guys, we have so much to talk about, but I do want to give you an update on a story that we talked about yesterday, the tragic death of the Biffl family. Now, one thing that came out during the course of that initial reporting was that the government seemed to think that the theft of the Biffl's money was not only organized and coordinated, but had been planned for quite some time, which would make sense if it was done by someone or some people who were close to the family, people who had access to knowledge about their intimate lives and the way that they structured their wealth. But what really made me start thinking about this is the way that they passed away. Now, it happened almost as soon as they took off in their airplane. The plane went down. They all died very, very quickly. I don't know what the ultimate cause of the crash was or if they've even released anything about it, but it made me start wondering if it wasn't an act of intentional sabotage. Was this a covert criminal act committed by someone who knew them in their personal life to ensure that the entire family passed away so that nobody would be there to claim the spoils of the family's wealth? Well, it turns out that the two people who the feds believe were involved in the theft itself, they haven't said anything about the deaths of the Biffles, but it turns out that they believe it is a husband and wife team. The husband was actually Greg's co-pilot when he was rescuing people from Hurricane Helene. That would be Aaron and Kaylee Lloyd. Kaylee would be the female that the feds showed the security camera footage of as she was going through the Biffl family's home for something like 6 hours. Now, there was one check that was cashed for something like $30,000, and then the bank very quickly caught on to the fact that this account should not be putting out any more money. And so several other checks were not cashed. I would think that the government probably has some information about who it was that tried to cash those checks, where that initial $30,000 check went. But it's now being said that Kaylee Lloyd is that person of interest that was identified as having broken into the Biffles' home. They're also suggesting she is the person of interest as the one who hacked into both he and his wife's email, their bank accounts, the Venmo accounts. So quite literally, all of it appears to be Kaylee. But, you know, just knowing what I know about married life, knowing what I know about Aaron being one of the most trusted people in Greg's inner circle, having performed, actions as his co-pilot, I find it difficult to believe that Kaylee would have done this all on her own without the knowledge or implicit permission of her husband. So Aaron and Kaylee, I don't know how long they knew Greg and his family, if they only met because Aaron became his co-pilot during the Hurricane Helene rescue efforts. But it really made me think if there was anybody who could sabotage an airplane to make sure the entire family went down, it would probably be a pilot. Don't you think it would be a pilot? Well, here is a picture of Kaylee right here. This is the only one that I've seen released, but she is the one that the Fed said did not show up to a private gathering after the Biffles died. She did show up to a different gathering, and she appeared to be very uncomfortable while she was there. Thank you so much to Freedom76 for gifting the subscriptions over there on my Rumble channel. I appreciate you, buddy. Thank you very, very much. All right, so we are going to continue to follow this story as deep as it goes. And I can only imagine now that she and her husband have been identified as people of interest in this case, it's not going to be long before we get something else. But God, I just pray that this was not an act of intentional sabotage designed to kill a man, his wife, and their kids so that they could steal his worldly possessions, because that just would make me so bummed out, even more bummed than knowing that that family passed away. All right. Now, we also have some great news coming out of President Trump's DOJ. Before we do that, I do have another quick sponsor that I need to tell you guys about. And I wanted to say thank you very much to them for continuing to sponsor the program. All right, you guys, you see that QR code on screen? I want you to make note of it and also make note of the URL, because I know a lot of you like gun culture as much as I do. And you've probably wondered at one point in your life what it might feel like to shoot with the same type of high-tech precision materials that are used by U.S. Special Forces. Well, I've got good news for you. If you're one of those people, after years of research and development, MCG Tactical has just dropped something incredible. It's called the Stinger Combat Sight. It's not going to be your average, cheap, low-end red dot. This one uses holographic technology that was at one time only reserved for elite military and law enforcement. And the Stinger is going to deliver crystal clear precision. It's so accurate, you could hit a dime at 300 yards without even trying. It's the exact same level of technology used by the pros. But of course, there is a twist, because most sites like this are going to go for around $600 or more, and people are going to happily pay it to get that kind of accuracy. But right now, through this exclusive deal with MCG Tactical, everybody in my audience can get this mil-spec sight for under $200, and it gets even better because my listeners are actually going to get 67% off, and MCG Tech is going to be covering the shipping. Like I said, take note of that QR code. All you got to do is scan it with the camera app on your phone, or you can go directly to mcgtac.com/redpill, mcgtac.com/redpill. That link will be below the video after this, but you can do that. Get yours today. And the only catch is supply is tight, and these are already flying off the shelves. So if you want to get the site that's built for the best, this is your opportunity. Take your shot, grab yours before they have to shut down orders. Once again, thank you very much to the good folks over there at MCG Tac, and of course for the people over there at Rumble. Freedom76, also thank you very much for the $10 rant, says love the show. Thank you so much, brother. Appreciate you too. All right. So I actually wanted to talk about this yesterday, but it was on the tail end of what we were discussing. We're going to open the show today with several key moves being made by the administration, which in my book are good for America. Now, as I said, I am a gun guy. You guys know that. I've got guns all around me at all times. If if somebody was to come into my house, it would be a bad day for them. But yesterday, Trump's DOJ not only had the confirmation of the new director of the ATF, Robert Sakata, but they also rolled out a whole host of reversals on rules and sort of just kind of generalized restrictions on the Second Amendment. Basically, 34 new reforms that are going to get rid of red tape for gun owners, make it easier for dealers and small businesses to operate and do business. This is undoubtedly a huge victory for people like us who love the Second Amendment and, most importantly, law-abiding Americans everywhere. So the DOJ and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms announced this week that they're unleashing these 34 notices of final and proposed rulemaking to slash the mountain of Biden-era red tape that was strangling gun owners and stopping FFLs from being able to do their job easily. So President Trump, when he came in, he signed an executive order, 14206, protecting Second Amendment rights. And essentially that asked the ATF and the DOJ to do a top-to-bottom review of all existing ATF regulations and to go through them and get rid of the ones that don't make sense, modernize the ones that are on the books but maybe don't make as much sense anymore. And you all probably remember during the Biden years, the ATF was essentially going after law-abiding gun owners, law-abiding FFLs, citizens who simply wanted to keep their families protected. So the agency is now being forced to listen to citizens and industry experts, FFLs, who are just trying to do commerce on a regular basis, and everyday Americans who want to who want to be able to exercise their God-given constitutional right without the federal government coming and breathing down your neck and wondering if your name is going to be on a list somewhere in some bureaucrat's office. So the good news is that these 34 rules that they are rolling out, either rolling back or rolling out, it's just the first wave of reforms. There are more that are coming. And it shows me that the Trump administration is serious about dismantling the deep state prohibitions on gun ownership that were put in place by the Biden regime. So Todd Blanche was there at the press conference, and he said, the Second Amendment is not a second-class right. This Department of Justice is ending the weaponization of federal authority against law-abiding gun owners, and we will continue to vigorously defend the rights as the Constitution demands. We're going to go through each of these proposed final regulatory changes, which will affect you in the audience. It will affect firearms, explosives, the importation of weapons, and anybody who has an FFL, as well as just the sort of general procedures that make up the day-to-day at the ATF. So first of all, they're going to be modernizing the ATF. They're going to update record keeping and business practices, allowing for things like electronic records for gun dealers, so they're not going to have to keep paper on hand. Changes to Form 4473, a defined retention period for records so that people don't have to keep everything forever. And then also verification updates to the licensure procedure. They're also going to be reducing the burdens of the ATF. They're going to remove or simplify requirements that are now seen as costly or unnecessary for lawful gun owners and businesses. So, a couple of examples would be changing the interstate transport procedures, allowing spouses registering for NFA categorized firearms. If I don't know if anybody here has ever, had a spouse that passed away who, had a couple of NFA items, but if they're not on the trust, then it can be a nightmare. And then, you might end up having to just destroy those things, or you end up going through a lengthy court battle, and it may not be worth it. Also, they're going to be removing some notification requirements that just, might seem duplicative or make people feel as if they have to do more than they should. They're also going to be clarifying and making definitions standard, more obvious, easier to understand. So in relation to straw purchase language, mental health related prohibitions, biological sex designation on ATF forms, and business premise definitions. They're also going to be updating regulations to match court rulings, statutes, and partner agencies. So we're not going to have all of these different rules and regulations related to gun ownership in different states all around the country. We've had some pretty incredible cases related to strengthening the Second Amendment over the last couple of years, and some of those have not been recognized by the ATF, but now they will be. They're also going to be rescinding some very controversial rules, which included Joe Biden's stabilizing brace rule, the pistol brace rule, also the 2024 engaged in business rule, and they're going to be revising machine gun definitions after Garland versus Cargill. That is going to be pretty awesome. From what I understand, they are going to be deregulating short-barreled rifles and suppressors from the NFA. So there are a lot of really great things that are happening in regards to the ATF. And I never thought that I would hear myself say that. Generally, my stance has been that the ATF should just be firmly and fully abolished. I think there's still room for that. But if they can strengthen gun ownership legislation and regulations before they do that, well, then I am perfectly okay with that. American Nurse, good to see American Nurse. I know your name. She says, I have been watching you for years, Zach. Always love your reports. I don't know if you actually did send that twice or if Rumble just repeated it twice, but I will say thank you. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. All right. Also, thank you to Hogleg71 for the can and Hogleg71 for the cookie. I appreciate you, Holmes. Okay. Now, also, in relation to President Trump, he signed an executive order today. Now, this is something I actually reported on several months ago. There was a rumor that came out of the administration that this was something that would be likely to happen in the coming months. But essentially, President Trump had hinted that he was going to sign an executive order that would address retirement savings for people like myself who don't have access to an employer-funded 401k or IRA savings account for when inevitably I may want to retire. Of course, I'm also thinking it's highly likely I'm just going to work until I die, but maybe this will make it possible for me not to. First, this is a brief 30-second preview of what was expected, and then we're going to look at President Trump commenting after having signed this executive order. All right, so that order did come. It was signed. And like I said, it's going to allow Americans currently with no access to these retirement accounts to now get them. What you did I just hear you guys said that there was no audio? What the? Okay, hold on. Okay, so you said there's no audio. Let me make sure that Rumble has my microphone selected correctly. It is. Okay, well then let's try this again with the other clip that I have of President Trump. Do you guys hear that? Okay. There is audio on Rumble. See, some people are saying there is audio. Now people are saying that they didn't hear audio. Okay, so I don't know why. Nothing has changed in the 30 seconds since I played the first clip. Let me try to play the first clip again. And let's see if you guys can hear that, because you should be able to. Okay, so are you saying that now you are not hearing the audio on the vid? Not on the vid. What the hell? That's, man, there's nothing different about my audio. Hang on a second. Let me see if there's a freaking, okay, there's no update. What the hell? What the hell? Okay, so let me try this. Tell me if you can hear it now. Okay, yeah, I know that I sound good. My audio is coming from a different channel, and you guys can obviously hear that. But the desktop audio is exactly the way it's been set up for years. So now people are not hearing it. Okay, hold on just a second. Let me see. Okay, let me try this now. Okay, now it's actually... Okay, and you guys are still saying that you're not hearing anything. Okay, let me try something else. Now you can hear it? Cyber X Speed, are you shitting me? Okay, I'm going to play it again. Tell me. Yes, of course, Alabama Christian. Of course I can hear him. Like I said, nothing is different with my audio setup. You just heard it slightly only for a second. The reason I did that was turning on another monitor, and so then you guys can hear it, but then I hear an echo. Hold on. Okay, yeah, no clip, a few scratchy sounds. Yeah, okay. What the hell is the problem? Let me hang on just a second. I'm going to see if there's an update on the soundboard, because that would make sense. Firmware's up to date. No. What the hell is going on? Nothing is different. Let me try this. I will try to share the screen directly, and we'll see if you guys can hear it now. Tell me if you hear it now.
President Trump will sign an important executive order today that could greatly help Americans financially plan for the near and far future. The order would expand access to retirement savings accounts for people who are working in this country who do not have employer-provided plans. According to the recent report, an estimated 54 million American workers do not have access to those savings accounts. Today's order would fix that.
Okay, so, and now can you guys hear me now that the screen is shared with Rumble Studio and I'm not on screen? Let me make sure. See, here's the thing. Rumble just changed the back end of Rumble Studio. That's the only thing that I can think of that is different. Certainly everything is exactly the same on my end. Okay, so now knowing that you guys can see that, well, let me, it's annoying. That's so annoying. All right. Well, in order to try to make it so that I don't have to go, Okay. In order to make it so that I don't have to keep going back and forth, okay, I've fixed it. So if you're not hearing anything, then I'm assuming you're further back in the stream. Let me see if I can change the view, and we'll just do it differently today. Okay. And we'll share that. All right. So we'll do it like this because otherwise I don't know why it's not working. It's so annoying. Okay. All right. So enough setup. Let's hear from President Trump. Great. It's going to, that's annoying. Okay. Let's hear from President Trump. And please confirm for me that you guys can hear the audio on this clip. Okay, so now you can't hear President Trump. Okay, so let me try something else. Also share audio. Yes. Okay. I know what I need to do to make that work every time.
Beginning at the start of next year, every American will be able to go to TrumpIRA.gov and open a new low-cost IRA account. You'll then be able to...
Okay, you are still not hearing audio? Now you are. No. Yes. Yes. Okay. That's a bingo. All right. That's what I thought.
Access the same type of retirement accounts that federal employees enjoy through the thrift savings plans, which are...
So this is the other really important aspect of this. This is not just any random retirement account. This is the exact same retirement accounts that they give to everybody in Congress. So I don't know what they're invested in. I don't know if they're self-directed, but this is what they give to congressmen and senators.
Incredible. As part of the Federal Savers Match Program, low-income Americans will be eligible to receive up to $1,000 per year in matching funds deposited directly into their accounts. It's a great thing. For millions of Americans who lack employer-sponsored plans, this will be really revolutionary because they'll be covered. Nobody thought that was possible. For example, if a 25-year-old who is eligible for a Savers Match Program invest just $165 a month under the matching federal contributions, they will have an estimated $465,000 in their account by the time they're 65 years old. In other words, they'll be rich. And there's something awfully nice about that. But this is only the first step. I was talking to Kevin Hassett a little while ago, and the people standing right behind me, we're going to take it to the next level. And the next level, Kevin, you're going to mention something, but the next level will be necessary to have congressional approval. What you just heard, we don't need congressional approval. And it'll never be terminated, because to terminate it, if somebody else is in office, to terminate it, you'd have to take that money away. You'd have to really take away something that's so positive. I don't think any politician would do it. But to take it to the next level, we need congressional approval, which should be very easy to get. It should be bipartisan. Normally it would be bipartisan, but today nothing's bipartisan, right? I mean, it should be something that everybody supports. So, Kevin.
All right. So that is good news. Now, I will just immediately go back to this view because there we go. Man, this is going to be annoying. Okay. So looking forward to seeing how that all plans out. I know some of you are thinking, well, I'm too old. That's not going to do anything for me. I've already retired. I've already had a career. Like I said, I'm almost 50 years old. So the idea that this retirement savings account is really going to do much for me, not really. But I'm not really exactly doing this just for myself. I am doing this, and my goal of saving America, fixing all of these problems that we have, it's not merely for my own personal benefit. My true hope is that the generations that come after me, the generations that come after you guys in the audience, are going to have a hope of enjoying that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that many of us have been robbed of our entire lives. I want to fix America for future generations. And of course, I want to make it as beautiful as I possibly can for people like us while we're still here. But at the end of the day, it's not really about us. It's about saving the country, and it's about making opportunity for the people who come after us. I hope at the very least, my daughter is going to be able to retire. I hope that that my grandkids are going to be able to retire. I hope that my son is going to be able to retire. You know, I mean, 2 daughters, 1 son. I hope all of them are going to be in a position where they don't have to work their fingers to the bone until the day that they drop dead. All right. Now, we also have an official shutdown announcement, meaning that the shutdown is over. After 75 days, the House has finally voted to pass the funding for DHS. It's not merely going to be another stopgap, meaning that in 5 or 6 months or so, we're going to go through the whole thing again. This is going to be a permanent 3-year funding plan for DHS. So there's no more games that the left or the political deep state are going to be able to play while Trump is in office to try to take money away from ICE, from Customs and Border Patrol, from DHS, from the Coast Guard. These agencies are all going to continue to work unabated, and they're going to be able to do their job, which hopefully means we're going to get back on track with the deportation operation. It also means that there is now nothing left that they have to obstruct in regards to that stuff. And so they're just going to have to sit back and watch as these people do their jobs. This was officially the longest shutdown in the nation's history. So after it passed in the House, it was then adopted. The House adopted the Senate approved budget after more than 2 months. So the whole thing is all taken care of now, and we don't have to worry about it anymore. It was a 215 to 211 vote, basically along party lines, and it's going to be delivering the $70 billion to these agencies. Now, the other thing that they passed was a brief extension on FISA. There is now going to be a 6-week extension on FISA as the finer details of either a longer approval for FISA is going to be passed in the House and the Senate, or maybe that gives them an opportunity to get rid of FISA altogether. But I'm really hoping that a major series of reforms comes into play. Dar Freedom Fighter says, Zach, thanks for your common sense rationale. Stay grounded. I certainly will, and thank you for that. Freya and Boys says, I seen Pete Hegseth say he supports the Major Richard Starr Act. Can you find and play that clip? I hope they can get this over the line, Zach. Thanks. Make this a $5 challenge. So I do not. The Major Richard, did we talk about this before? Or is this something that you've told us about before? Freya, let me do a quick search. Major Richard Starr Act. So that would eliminate widely known as the Wounded Veteran Tax, a policy that forces medically retired combat injured veterans to forfeit a portion of their earned military retirement pay to receive disability compensation. Yeah, I mean, I don't know where this stands, but this is something that I think obviously should be passed. I mean, there's no reason that disabled veterans should have to be paying tax on anything. Same with Social Security. I can't believe anybody who receives Social Security is paying taxes on stuff that was already taxed from them. I'd also like to see a major reform of Social Security because with the amount, do you guys realize the amount of money that we put in to the Social Security Administration plan? Like, we should be multimillionaires by the time that we retire instead of getting the paltry $1,200 a month that they dole out to us. But obviously, they're using Social Security money for doing everything else. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, I'll see what I can find out about that. No, I know it's not a tax. It's making sure that wounded veterans are not taxed in relation to their benefits. Okay, so we'll figure out what's going on with that. Thank you again to President Trump for continuing to make decisions that bring in benefits for the American people. All right, now Unfortunately, Lee says I'm a disabled vet and I don't pay any tax. All right. Like I said, I don't know anything about it. I'll figure it out and I'll get back to you guys on it. All right. So President Trump posted earlier today, for months, Senator Bill Cassidy of the great state of Louisiana, who, by the way, is up for re-election, and President Trump has endorsed a Republican challenger to him. He has also now directly called for people to make sure they don't vote for Bill Cassidy, but he is a very disloyal person whose Trump endorsement got him elected, but later voted to impeach President Trump on what was now proven to be a total hoax and scam. He's been standing in the way of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s nominee, Casey Means, for the important position of U.S. Surgeon General. I nominated Casey, a strong Maha warrior, at the recommendation of Secretary Kennedy, who understands the Maha movement better than anyone, with perhaps the possible exception of me. Nevertheless, despite Senator Cassidy's intransigence in political games, Casey will continue to fight for Maha on the many important health issues facing our country, such as the rising childhood disease epidemic, increased autism rates, poor nutrition, over-medicalization, and researching the root cause of infertility and many other difficult medical problems. Casey, thank you for your service to our nation, President Donald J. Trump. All right, so essentially what's happening is because of Bill Cassidy, Casey Means is being pulled from consideration for the U.S. Surgeon General. Now, her brother Callie posted, I'm so proud of Casey and the way she conducted herself during this process. I am also proud to work for the Trump administration, who has marshaled the disruptive Maha message and driven victories against dark forces personified by Bill Cassidy. At every step, Casey's message of hope and empowerment was thwarted by Bill Cassidy. Bill Cassidy is a mindless avatar for his donors and a blind defender of the status quo system that is profiting from American sickness. At every turn during Casey's confirmation, Bill Cassidy worked to delay her and smear her. I believe it was early on that Casey answered a bunch of questions before Congress. At every turn during Casey's confirmation, Bill Cassidy worked to delay her and smear her. For several months last year, Bill Cassidy knew Casey's due date. Casey was pregnant. He demanded to schedule her hearing on her due date, and at the last minute, scheduled it 2 days later. He could have scheduled it weeks before, but Casey ended up having the baby the hour her first hearing was scheduled. Bill Cassidy worked with Mike Pence's pharma-funded group to smear Casey in the media as not sufficiently pro-life, when anyone who has a rudimentary understanding of Casey's message knows it is grounded in a deep respect and awe of the miracle of life. To Casey's assertion that Americans should consult with their doctor before taking any medical product, he worked to smear her as anti-vaccine for not saying every American should submit their children to mandatory injections without parental or medical input, which is his view. Bill Cassidy will lose his re-election and immediately work for the pharmaceutical industry who funded his political career. He will be remembered as an inconsequential figure who tried to stop the important and disruptive Maha conversation President Trump and RFK have unleashed. Because of his constant delay tactics, Casey is being pulled from consideration. I am so proud of her and the historic change the Trump administration is pushing for against broken and corrupt defenders of the status quo like Bill Cassidy. So this is really unfortunate. I definitely wanted to see Casey in this position. I think that she could have done some great work. But the good news is, as President Trump and her brother Callie have both said, Casey's work with the administration is not over by a long shot. Now, of course, because Casey is being pulled from consideration, that means that we have a new contender for the Surgeon General of the United States. I know a little bit about this woman, but not a lot. Her name is Dr. Nicole Saphir. Now, I think she's probably going to get pushed right through because she has for a long time been a Fox News presenter. So she, it seems like most of these people who were on Fox News just don't have as big of a problem getting through because they have public statements that have been made which are not all that controversial. And, even somebody like Pete Hegseth, who, I thought, he was able to sail through even though there were people who were working against him. So President Trump said, I am pleased to announce I am nominating Dr. Nicole B. Saphir to be the next Surgeon General of the United States. Nicole is a star physician who has spent her career guiding women facing breast cancer through their diagnosis and treatment while tirelessly advocating to increase early cancer detection and prevention, and at the same time working with men and women on all forms of cancer diagnoses and treatments. She is also an incredible communicator who makes complicated health issues more easily understood by all Americans. Dr. Nicole Saphier will do great things for our country and help make America healthy again. Congratulations, Nicole. Our country has long been waiting for you, President Donald J. Trump. Sapphire, Saphier, potato. I've never heard her name said before, so this is my first time even speaking it. So, considering the fact that she's been a Fox News presenter, I think that that's probably going to be the biggest positive for her, because she will be able to communicate her positions. A lot of people have asked, oh, well, wait, she's a cancer doctor. Does that mean that she's been pushing chemo and ridiculous treatments on people? Was she in favor of childhood vaccine mandates? I can tell you the answer is no on that. Can't really tell you much about her career otherwise. But I think that President Trump having chosen her is really the desire to get somebody in there who will be able to be appointed. She will have other people working with her, people like Casey and Callie Means, who can offer their expertise on helping to push through the MAHA agenda. I can't imagine President Trump would have put her forward if she was going to be somebody at this late juncture that wasn't going to do the job that was necessary. So Tree Hugger says she takes a holistic approach. Well, that's good, because we need somebody who's holistic, not just simply aligned with Western medicine. So undoubtedly, I will do some more research about Dr. Nicole Saphier, over the course of the next couple of days. I'll tell you what I think about her, but I haven't seen a whole ton of negative stuff. But yeah, either way, glad to see that somebody is going to be in that position. Now, here is a post that was just published by Katie Talento. She used to be the White House policy advisor. It looks like now she's doing some work in the natural health field. She says she's an epidemiologist, recovering epidemiologist, and a naturopath. Now, this is pretty stunning, and it has to do with her time in the White House during the first Trump administration. So in 2017, one of my first tasks at the White House was to keep Bobby Kennedy far away from the West Wing. Not because President Trump didn't want him there. He'd actually agreed to Bobby's pitch to create a vaccine safety commission. But others, and you can guess who, weren't thrilled, and they told me to get rid of him. So I protected the orthodoxy I'd been trained to protect, and it took me years to realize what I had actually done. Tomorrow, I published the full confession. The 2002 autism moms I ignored. The 2017 Vaccine Safety Commission I killed. The 2021 moment I finally broke, and the apology I owed Secretary Kennedy, and what I've done to atone. It's the hardest thing I've ever written. I'm sending it out to my list at 6 a.m. You can sign up in the comments. So I wanted to give this woman some props, because it takes a lot of courage to come forward and admit when you're wrong. It takes even more courage to come forward and admit that you're wrong when the decisions that you are apologizing for might have led to the death and suffering of untold numbers of people. So yeah, this couldn't have been an easy thing for this woman to write. She is launching her Substack with it, or at least she's putting it out on Substack. I don't know if she's had it before, but Robert F. Kennedy Jr. actually commented, and he said, "Thank you, Katie, for coming clean and for your support. All is forgiven." And she says, "You are gracious now as then, Mr. Secretary. God has put you where you are now, and I'm praying for your success." So I'm really looking forward to seeing what she says tomorrow. We are going to go ahead and read it here on the channel. But yeah, again, this just must have taken a tremendous amount of courage to come forward and put this information out there, considering the fact that she is admitting to single-handedly blocking RFK Jr.'s injection into the first Trump White House. So looking forward to seeing what she says. All right, now, another Maha win, Anna Paulina Luna continues to do things that seem to be undeniably good for the American people. She had put something forward as an amendment to the Farm Bill, and it's called the Luna Amendment, and it's just passed in the House. Essentially, what it does is strip out pesticide liability shields. And this will undoubtedly help hold pesticide companies accountable if their products are giving people cancer and killing them. So this is now going to be part of the Farm Bill, and it will be law because the Farm Bill is being passed. So Una Panuna Banca coming through in the clutch like a winner. She also went on record speaking about the events of Butler when President Trump nearly was assassinated. And she said what all of us know, that the assassination attempt at Butler, Pennsylvania against President Trump had all of the hallmarks of an inside job by the intelligence community. So let me go ahead and share my screen properly so that Rumble can actually have you guys hear what I'm hearing.
Questions of the former Secret Service director. I think that there was a lot there. Specifically, what was interesting about the Butler assassination, and I've said this before, I think that that was intentional negligence. I was one of the individuals that actually asked questions of the former Secret Service director. We actually had whistleblowers from within the Secret Service that came out that stated that, you know, they were basically not present or told to stand down at the actual there was a group of snipers that were actually met that day that was coordinated by the local law enforcement, and they just so happened to not show up. The area that was left open was literally the perfect location to take a shot and basically assassinate someone. And then you have this aspect of the Biden administration that, you know, basically gave limited staffing to a former president with Secret Service, and everything that accumulated in the way that it was within, you know, hours of Crooks being shot and basically, you know, neutralized. The entire scene was done. I never heard any follow-up from that FBI on what happened to the other burner phones. And also too, if this was just some random, you know, lone shooter, why did he have burner phones? What happened to his video game console? I mean, that there's a lot outstanding. And I've actually shared this before, that to me, that has all the marks of intelligence, and I believe an inside job. That's literally what I think is the ultimate revelation of that.
Absolutely, it was an inside job. Everybody here knows that. The reason I thought it was important to play this is because, again, this takes a tremendous amount of courage when you're currently sitting in the United States Congress and you're willing to say something like this. We need to get to the bottom of what happened. I sincerely hope that we do. Now, this was reshared by Patrick Colbeck, who also wanted to point out that the 2020 election theft was also an inside job, also by the intelligence community. And he brings a specific patent along to back this up. This is U.S. Patent 7549049. Fun facts, he says, funding a shell game. NIH procurement vehicle used for election patent bypasses congressional oversight. The patent describes real-time injection of fake voters into live election systems as part of an audit process that ostensibly removes these fake voters before the final results are published. The patent was funded by the U.S. taxpayer dollars that, of course, funds all of our downfalls, but it's owned by Swiss-based Accenture GmbH, which is domiciled in Bermuda so they can avoid paying taxes to the U.S. government. The inventor of this patent is the vice chair of Source America. It was formerly the NISH, which is an NGO, non-governmental organization that sources billions of dollars in federal contracts. The SERV project, under which patented technology was developed, was canceled due to security vulnerabilities. But maybe it wasn't actually canceled and it was just taken underground into black budget programs. The patent application paperwork was filed in 2005 after that project was canceled in January of 2004, and the patent was issued in 2009. So Patrick says the bottom line is the capabilities to manipulate voter history data and voter tallies outlined in this very patent align very well with the election record anomalies that are observed by investigators. And he gives us a handy dandy little graphic showing exactly how this all fits together. Now, I'm not going to bore you with all of the different ways that elections can be manipulated because we talk about it almost on a daily basis. But again, I'd like to encourage everybody to follow my friend Andrew Paquette because he goes by Zark Files on X, and Andrew continues every single day to bring new information about his findings. Now, one of those things that we were talking about that Andrew had recently brought forward were all of those duplicate voter records that he found in New York. People with the exact same name at the exact same address, which was just a mailbox in a UPS store, people with different birthdays and different voter identifiers, but of course the same names. Well, he has even more evidence to show that each and every one of these duplicate records, which are really different records, just duplicate information, are all ostensibly the same person, because we've got signature comparisons that we can make. So he's got 3 different signatures, well, 3 different files using the same signature, and every single signature appears to be exactly the same signature. You've got all of the features in each of the signatures that you find in every other signature. Now, I know that people's signatures are generally similar, but to have a signature on one document that is exactly the same as a signature on another document is very rare, perhaps except in the case of President Donald J. Trump, because Donald Trump uses the same pen every single time. He is very fastidious about the way that he draws his lines. It is the exact same signature every time. But in this instance, it definitely appears to be a digital recreation. So you have a couple of telltale signs. In the T, there is a break at one point as the line continues around in the cursive. And that same break is present in every single signature. In the lower portion of the T, you also have a bump where the line curves back around, and that bump is in the exact same place in every single signature. In the G of the name, you also have a break in the G. Now, those breaks, from my experience, likely come from the scanning of a real signature and digitizing it into a file, because what you'll have is people, letting up on the intensity of the pen as you're going over sweeping lines like that. But these 3 features present in each of these signatures indicate that there's no way these are 3 different people. These are obviously all of the same people, and the same signature is just being used over and over and over again. Now, Andrew was able to receive these signature files as a result of a FOIA request, and it just shows over and over and over again. And they've done this with some 50-odd signatures, and they find the exact same things every single time. Here's another one. You've actually got specks of dust, which are obviously going to be from a scan of a real person's signature. You've got these groupings of dots, which appear to show in the upper portion of a P. That's also going to be the same phenomenon that I mentioned just a moment ago, where the pen lightly drags over the paper. The scanner only catches so much of the actual signature itself. And here's another one where Andrew actually took color portions of these files and removed them to make them more visible. And you can see here, you've got the exact same line spacing and tracing from the digitization of the signature. And it happens over and over and over again. There's just no way to say it, except that we have a major problem with fraudulent voters in every single place that Andrew has looked. Now, there are some congressmen like Anna Paulina Luna who are focusing on key issues that are affecting Americans. Perhaps not always the issues that you want her to focus on, but she's working on the things that she's able to change. And I got to give her credit for that. And then you've got other people like Democrat Congressman Seth Moulton, when he goes and attempts to work on something for America, he's doing things that undoubtedly and undeniably are bad and will not do anything to advance an America agenda. So specifically in this instance, he has seemingly called for the death or the execution of Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. He went on CNN yesterday to speak about the testimony Hegseth gave before the House of Representatives in a series of questions about the Iran war. Now, Hegseth had a couple of clips that went viral from that, and the interview with Aaron Burnett, speaking with Moulton, took a pretty strange turn when Hegseth had seemingly said that he would give no quarter to America's enemies, and Moulton calls this a war crime and suggests that Hegseth should be tried as a war criminal for the crime of basically defending the United States of America. Doesn't make any sense unless, of course, you're Seth Moulton. Let me go ahead and get this pulled up here. I'm going to have to share my screen in order to play the clip.
It's interesting.
The other interesting aspect of this is this clip did not go out on CNN's broadcast. They had a delay on it, and so they cut Seth Moulton before he fully said his statement about wanting Pete Hegseth to essentially be put to death. And the only way you can see the clip is by seeing these digitized versions that people were able to grab.
And on top of that, we then have the strike where they came back and hit it again, a double tap, just purely to kill these survivors who were clinging to wreckage. You know, it's interesting, Aaron, another historical analogy. Back in World War II, the Allies tried Nazi submarine captains for doing this exact same thing. And guess what the conclusion was? They got executed. Listen to that, Mr. Secretary. And on top.
So, yeah, I think it's pretty clear. That's exactly what Moulton is suggesting there, that Pete Hegseth should be put to death. And then you've got others like Congressman Greg Steube. Congressman Greg Steube has, for a long time, been trying to address the issue of foreign adversarial ownership of farmland here in the United States. This is only now just being addressed. But Greg Steube was able to get this passed in the House. This is a bill that stops foreign adversaries from being able to purchase American farmland. And as you know, the government, since President Trump came back, has actually reappropriated a good portion of that farmland. So that means that you're not going to have the Chinese Communist Party purchasing swaths of land around military bases as they did during the Biden administration. So, and yes, very, very nice suit. Good job, Greg. Okay, let me share this screen and we'll hear from Greg on this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The agricultural land of the United States should be owned by Americans, not by foreign adversaries, hostile regimes, or those who actively seek to undermine the economic, food, and national security of the American people. Right now, federal law does not have a forceful provision that strictly denies entities and persons affiliated with foreign adversaries and state sponsors of terrorism from buying up American farmland. The same governments that hack our critical infrastructure, poison our communities with fentanyl, and dare to surpass the United States on the world stage are slowly acquiring American farmland acre by acre, county by county, and state by state. My amendment is simple. It would prohibit the purchase of agricultural land by foreign adversaries and state sponsors of terrorism. The fact that our enemies and their accomplices are already not firmly restricted from purchasing ag land in our nation should alarm every member of this body. Enemy ownership of our agricultural land presents a clear, dire, and direct threat to our national security. Much of our farmland surrounds our nation's most sensitive critical infrastructure assets and military installations, and such proximity can afford our enemies the ability to surveil our troops and disrupt critical supply chains that support military readiness, our energy grid, and keep our economy flourishing. We should never allow our enemies to gain a foothold in the shadows of the installations that protect and defend our economic and national security. Our agricultural land is perhaps one of our nation's greatest strategic assets. It's the land that sustains American families, insulates our military installations, and serves as the backbone of the American economy. Why should we ever give our enemies a single inch of the very land that sustains our country? My amendment draws a hard line, which should have existed all along. Our enemies don't get to own Americans' agricultural land. I urge my colleagues to support the American people's sovereign right to our farmland by voting for my amendment. I reserve the remainder.
All right. So that, like I said, has passed. I would like to see it go one step farther. I don't think that foreigners people who are not citizens of the United States should be allowed to purchase any land in the United States. If you go to a nation like, say, I think it's like Indonesia or Thailand, as a foreigner, what you do instead of being able to purchase land or purchase a home, the land must be owned by a citizen of the country. And then you essentially get like a 100-year lease on the property. If you have a house that you build, you're actually paying for the construction of that. But at the end of that 100 years, essentially when you die, everything goes back to the family that owns that land, and that family are citizens of that country. We should not be allowing the wholesale scoop up of land and property by people who are not citizens of the United States. We should make it as easy as possible for our people to be able to own land, whether it's agricultural or residential real estate, so that we can help rise up the American people and make the quality of life better for everybody. And then that land, those homes, can be then passed on to future generations, in further solidifying the structural mechanisms of the American economy and the people that make it possible. So glad to see that amendment passed as well. That's very good. Also have an update for us on the story that we spoke about yesterday in New Orleans. We are going to, Orleans Parish. So before we go into that, I do have a very brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. Let me say thank you to them. You guys know that banks are not your friends. They can freeze your accounts, they can shut off your cards, and they can lock you out of your money at a moment's notice. Banks do not protect you. They control you when they've got control over your money, and that's why real financial freedom starts with the ownership of that money. So introducing the Rumble Wallet. It's a non-custodial wallet built for people who refuse to give up control. And with the Rumble Wallet, you don't just buy digital currency like Bitcoin and Tether. You can also own Tether Gold, which is real gold, but it's on the blockchain. And through Tether Gold, you get direct ownership of physical gold bars. Each one is fully allocated, verifiable by serial number, purity, and weight. It's not paper gold. It's not an IOU. It's real physical gold, but without bank vaults, storage fees, or gatekeepers. You can buy it, sell it, move it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that's even when traditional gold markets are closed. And if you want, you can even cash it in and have it redeemed for physical gold bars. That is extremely powerful. So when you support content creators on Rumble using the Rumble Wallet, you can also tip them directly, and it's peer-to-peer and outside the banking system. Nobody's going to take a 30 to 40% cut off the top. There's no permission, middlemen, no cancel button. It's your wallet permanently forever. So thank you very much to Rumble for getting that set up, and appreciate you guys for the support. Let's see. Chow Corinne says, yes, my mom bought a condo in Mexico and she can only get a 99-year lease back in the 80s. Yeah, I mean, other countries do it. Other countries understand that if you want to elevate your own people, you can't give your country away wholesale to foreigners. So, yeah, that's definitely the way we should be doing it. All right, so why is this notable? Yesterday, we talked about the fact that the Orleans Parish Sheriff and her, I believe, CTO or CFO were both indicted on a host of felony charges. Yes, the CFO. Well, this all goes back to that dramatic jailbreak that happened last year. We did cover it a little bit, but last year in May, there were 10 dangerous felons, including murderers, that were being housed at the Orleans Parish Correctional Facility, and they escaped in a really daring and dramatic way. Basically, some bolts were removed from outside the jail. So investigators were looking to see who was in the area at the time, because obviously the people who removed those bolts were the ones that led to these inmates being able to escape in the ultimate breach at the facility. At the time, there were 10 inmates who broke free: Antoine Massey, Lenton Van Buren, Leo Tate, Kendall Miles, Derek Groves, Jermaine Donald, Corey Boyd, Gary Price, Robert Moody, DeKennan Dennis, and Keith Lewis. If you remember, there was footage from inside the prison that showed inmates basically ripping the door off the wall before they were able to flee. They just ran outside. I guess that there had been a hole that was hidden behind a toilet that people working at the jail, like the sheriff, were unable to find. Law enforcement was able to eventually apprehend all of the escapees, but 13 people were charged with helping them escape. Susan Hudson was indicted on 30 felony counts, which included malfeasance while in office, obstruction of justice, and a host of other charges. So this is all coming after a special grand jury investigation. Susan Hudson, now going to be the former sheriff, and the chief financial officer, both getting indicted by this grand jury on charges of malfeasance and other crimes related to the jailbreak. It's interesting because at the time, the sheriff came forward and said, we are going to get who is responsible for this. And ultimately, the grand jury determined, well, you were in charge, so you were definitely the one who was responsible for it. Bianca Brown is the chief financial officer who has also been indicted on 20 different felony charges. They're both looking at spending the rest of their lives in prison. So I look forward to seeing how this pans out. Thank you very much to Frey on the Boys. Okay, so he says that the Major Richard Starr Act would just allow veterans to collect both VA disability and retirement at the same time in full. Okay, I don't know why they wouldn't do that. That makes like a lot of sense. In the Philippines, expats can own land. Well, the Philippines are owned by the United States, so that's different than a foreign country. So yeah, the Philippines is like a principality of the United States. So yeah, you can own whatever you want over there, but different than in a foreign nation. All right, so somebody had mentioned Jerome Powell earlier in the program. Now, Jerome Powell's time at the Federal Reserve as the chief of the board may be coming to a close, but he's just made the administration aware that once he leaves the chief position, he's not actually going to leave the board. He is making the unprecedented decision to remain on the board so that he can continue to have an influence on the Federal Reserve and perhaps save himself from being criminally indicted. Well, Jeanine Pirro appeared this morning on Fox, and she said that they have a limited time frame in which they can attempt to appeal that decision by Judge Jeb Boasberg to get those subpoenas to look at the private communications and the files of the Federal Reserve, and they are definitely going to be doing that. Nothing is going to stop us, she said, and we will definitely not allow a judge to tell us what we can or cannot do at the Department of Justice.
Jerome Powell at the Fed, he will no longer be the chairman. That will be Kevin Warsh, but he is going to stay on there as one of the board members. Mm-hmm. You have until May 4th to decide whether you're going to appeal the quash subpoena against the Fed for information you're looking for. That's on Monday. Have you made a decision yet?
Oh, I made a decision a long time ago, Dana. There is no question but that we will appeal Judge Boasberg's quashing of our subpoenas requesting information. You've got billions of dollars in cost overruns on a very small project. And when a federal judge believes that he can stand in front of the door of the grand jury and prevent a prosecutor from going in, when the United States Supreme Court has said the prosecutor can go in on suspicions or rumor, we've got to appeal that decision, and we will appeal that decision. We await the decision of the Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, and based upon that decision, we will then decide what we're going to do.
All right, so
Jerome Powell.
As Judge Jeanine said, there is currently an investigation by the Office of the Inspector General. The OIG will be taking a look at all of that information. There will be the appeal to gain access to the files of the Federal Reserve. And eventually, I expect that there will be a criminal investigation into Jerome Powell. The Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, he may come with some pretty heavy information. Depending on what his findings are, ultimately, that will lead to a larger investigation by Jeanine Pirro and the Department of Justice. And then hopefully we can get where we want to be with regard to Jerome Powell. Now, here is Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent commenting on the soon-to-be former Fed chair, Jerome Powell, deciding to stay on the Fed Reserve Board. Principled Enigma, thank you very much. The term for the Philippines is a U.S. territory. All right, let's go ahead and hear from Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent.
Secretary. We look forward to the Kevin Warsh era at the Fed. I know you've been a big supporter. Unfortunately, today, ungentlemanly, Jay Powell has decided to stay on as the governor. It's only the second time in 113 years. I don't know why. You know, let's just say, why did he have to do it? Why not just leave it up to Kevin Warsh for a new era?
Larry, I want to come back to the Warsh Fed, but I will say it's highly unusual what former chair, soon to be former chair Powell did. And Larry, to be clear, the last time that a Fed chair stayed on the board, it was at the request of the president.
Yeah.
And one thing I can promise you is President Trump did not request for Jay Powell to stay. I think it's highly unusual for someone who says he's an institutionalist and cares about norms at the Fed. This is a violation of all Federal Reserve norms. And I've got to tell you also, Larry, I think it is an insult to Kevin Warsh, Mickey Bowman, and Chris Waller to think that these other Republican nominees do not care about the institution of the Fed and that he alone can maintain the integrity of the Fed. We've had the worst inflation that perhaps in our country's history, certainly in 47 or 50 years under this chairman. And I think the good news is today, Kevin Warsh cleared committee. He's going to be confirmed. He will be the new Fed chair on time, May 15th, May 16th. And I think it's going to be a new day at the Fed. And again, all President Trump wanted was accountability. We're going to get an IG report on the building. That's all he ever asked for.
Yes, sir.
And I think that we will have a great monetary policy. I think we will have great management in terms of the regulatory and of the facilities.
We'll leave it there. Thank you ever so much, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
All right, so couple of things. The Philippines is no longer a U.S. territory. They gained their independence in 1946. There is something about the Philippines, though, that allows you to have some type of special status over there because you're a U.S. citizen. So sorry for my confusion on that. Also, Serter was not correct. We were we were corrected by Freya because he says the Philippines has the same standards as those other nations I was referencing. You can own condos in the Philippines, but in order to own land, well, you have to have a long-term lease. So either way, we're going to move on from that subject. Thank you to 412 Productions, my good friend. Love you, buddy. Have an awesome show. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Filter Dog 1 says, best bet is gold pills. Appreciate you. No thanks, Joe says, good afternoon, Zach and Lisa. Thursday to you both. I hope people are beginning to allow themselves to recognize the fact that things are happening every day. And thanks to your efforts, we hopefully will have less stressful days. Thanks again, and God bless. Be safe. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Yes, I agree with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. It is going to be a new day at the Fed once Kevin Warsh gets in there. And hopefully, even though Jerome Powell is going to stick around on the board, it's not going to allow him to have an outsized measure of control. I hope that there's going to be major reforms going on at the Fed. And obviously, looking forward to seeing what happens with this OIG report. Also checking in with Dr. Oz over at CMS. Bad news for the state of Minnesota. CMS and Oz have just notified Governor Tim Walz in the state of Minnesota that they are now deferring an additional $91 million in federal Medicaid spending. This is likely in response to the big Minnesota raids that just took place this week. He says this follows a pattern we can't ignore, from the Leering Center scandal to the recent DOJ action involving child care centers. Minnesota's Medicaid program has shown serious vulnerabilities to fraud. These are not isolated breakdowns. They point to systemic issues that must be addressed. Here's the reality. The federal government funds roughly half of Medicaid. That gives CMS both the authority and the responsibility to ensure those dollars are spent legally and appropriately. When they're not, we act. Earlier this year, after auditing the Q4 fiscal year 2025 billing, we deferred over $250 million. Now, of this new $91 million, $76 million is tied to 14 service categories that are highly vulnerable to fraud. $14 million involves program integrity concerns, including payments for ineligible individuals. And we're giving Governor Walz as much support as we can to turn this around. However, we cannot and will not pay bad bills. So we're asking for more information from Minnesota to verify these bills. CMS will continue using every tool available to protect Medicaid's integrity because this program must serve the most vulnerable Americans while honoring the trust of taxpayers. More updates to come soon. As always, I'm grateful to VP's leadership as CMS plays its part in the whole of government effort to root out fraud. Now, not going to play the video because I essentially read the text of the video. However, I do think that Tim Walz is very, very close to being criminally indicted himself. One of the stories I brought you earlier this week was about Amy Bach. She was the orchestrator of the Feeding Our Future fraud scandal, $250 million stolen from that fraud itself. And very interestingly, along with Amy Bach attempting to get those court documents of interviews out to members of the media, apparently, she had also had her son reach out to Republican legislators in the Minnesota State House and Minnesota State Senate. She wanted them to know that she herself allegedly had gone to Tim Walz to try to make him and the administration aware of fraud that was happening in the subgroups below her organization. And that when she alerted them to the fraud that was going on, she was essentially told to just stop talking about it because they weren't going to do anything about it. And so she alleges that her prosecution was merely an effort by the administration to sort of pass the buck and take any responsibility off of them. Now, as I told you, her sentencing is coming up very soon. And I have to wonder, considering that her prosecution took place some time ago, has she had any conversations with the current U.S. attorney in Minneapolis? Has she spoken with the current Department of Justice? Is she going to give some information that will lead to an indictment of Tim Walz and Keith Ellison or others within the administration so that she can get a lesser sentence? Because she's going to be looking at a lot of time in prison. And Amy Bach at this point has quite the incentive to do whatever she can to stay out of prison. So I'm definitely going to be following that one for you guys as well. Now, we also have new information here on that Medicaid deferment that was just spoken of by Dr. Oz. Earlier this year, the Minnesota Department of Human Services began reviewing every Medicaid provider that was enrolled in the initial 13 high-risk welfare programs. Now, since that process began, nearly half of the providers that were reviewed have been disenrolled, just over 42%. And for years, Minnesota has been dealing with a major fraud problem. It's seen criminals pillage government programs, with the decision in 2025 having the DHS designate 14 state-run Medicaid-funded welfare programs as high risk. Now the DHS is exclusively overseeing those 14 programs, and there will be no payments going out to fraudulent actors. Now, the same year, the U.S. Attorney's Office estimated $9 billion could have been stolen from those programs since 2018. The overwhelming majority of individuals that have been arrested and convicted in the ongoing fraud saga have been from the Somali community. And as the DHS ended one of the 14 programs because they found it to have just been overrun by fraud, basically all fraud, nothing legitimate about it. Additionally, the agency implemented that prepayment process review that screens claims submitted by these Medicaid providers that are enrolled in those programs. So the Medicaid providers, if you don't know, are the businesses and other organizations that receive Medicaid funds in exchange for providing these eligible services. The problem is federal authorities have threatened to withhold all of those Medicaid funds if Minnesota fails to address the fraud. Up until this point, I don't know of any overt actions they've taken to stem that bleeding. That's why we see the CMS continuing to draw back more and more money. So Minnesota had agreed to review every one of those providers. Now, during that review process, which is called Revalidate 2026, it's requiring DHS to examine over 5,000 providers in a very short period of time, just a couple of months. And the DHS previously asked every other state agency to collectively find 168 state employees who can assist in that effort. Considering how many people came forward as whistleblowers throughout the last couple of years, I would imagine they would be the perfect people to help out. Now, according to DHS, the agency is examining provider documents, they're reviewing billing, they're conducting on-site visits as part of the process. You'll remember in February, they put out a press release saying they would be re-examining and reevaluating over 5,800 Medicaid providers before the summer. Well, summer is just around the corner, and the DHS still has a long way to go before this revalidation process is complete. With the figures we get from DHS, 546 providers have completed the revalidation process and have been reapproved as of the 16th of this month. But 405 providers have been disenrolled since the revalidation process began this year. Again, that is 42.5% of all providers that have completed revalidation and are found to just be fraudulent. Again, you have over 4,600 providers still in the middle of the revalidation process. They're all listed as pending. They're not going to be receiving any money until the process is complete. At that rate, we're looking at probably another 2,000 providers that may simply be found to have been fraudulent since the very beginning. Now, the Alpha News, who had covered this story, contacted DHS with questions about the process, wanted to know which providers were disenrolled. And the agency said that they saw evidence that these 405 providers were simply fraudulent, but they would not give any more information. Now, we also have this piece of news here. Yesterday, we talked about the fact that the administration was putting a renewed focus on the state of Maine. There's already been a whole host of raids and closures of these same types of businesses that have been closed in Minnesota. But they seem to have just as close of a relationship in Maine with the current governor of Maine as they do in the state of Minnesota. Now, in Maine, we're looking and talking about Governor Janet Mills. Now, Governor Janet Mills had not been addressing much of this on her own, essentially blaming the administration for targeting minority communities and immigrant communities by going after Somalis, which were defrauding the people of Maine in the same way they were defrauding the people of Minnesota. And she was also seemingly getting a lot of money from those groups. Now that the raids have begun and many of these people are being arrested and having their businesses shut down, strangely enough, Governor Janet Mills is being forced to suspend her candidacy for Senate in the fall. So Janet Mills says unequivocally, when I decided to run for the United States Senate last year, it was because I believed Maine people were getting a bad deal from Washington, and because the president of the United States was threatening democracy and pushing our nation to the brink of disaster. I continue to believe that today. While I have the drive and passion, commitment and experience, and above all else, the fight to continue on, I very simply do not have the one thing political campaigns unfortunately require today, the financial resources. So she has dropped her campaign. I think that Janet Mills doesn't have the resources because the people who are otherwise going to be funding her campaign have all been exposed as fraudulent criminals. And so those criminals now no longer have the money that they were going to be pumping into her campaign, and she is going to be on her way out. Now, she and her brother, I think, are also likely going to be indicted for the actions they've taken to not only help these Somali businesses establish a fraudulent presence, receive grant funding and public funding from the state government of Maine, but her brother, as a lawyer, has also been instrumental in helping to bring citizens of the Chinese People's Republic of China, members of the Chinese Communist Party, come into the state of Maine and set up these clandestine marijuana grow operations, which oftentimes lead to the complete poisoning of the homes in which the marijuana is being grown. Chemicals get dumped into the ground. It seeps into the groundwater. It can contaminate the neighborhood and bring down the value of people's homes. So I think that both Janet Mills and her brother are going to be looking at potentially some indictments coming down the road for them as well. That might also have something to do with the fact that she's dropping out. Now, there was also a clip that I wanted to share from a testimony by a whistleblower in Minnesota. And I thought that I had it pulled up there, but I didn't. So if you'll give me just a moment, I can pull that up because it's pretty shocking. Here it is. Okay. All right. So this is a former state trooper by the name of Jay Swanson. And Jay was testifying to the fact that the fraud in Minnesota was an open secret. In fact, it was so open, it went all the way to refugee camps in Kenya. Take a listen to this. Completely shocking to imagine that it was this easy to scam the state of Minnesota, and everybody coming from Africa was all too aware of it. And I got to let Chi-Chi outside. So here we go.
I regularly joined with various investigators and agents as we interviewed the owners and employees of the child care centers being investigated. More than once, I heard an owner or employee respond when we asked where they first learned about the daycare scam. They would say they had first heard about it while in the refugee camp in Kenya. These individuals told us that they had heard you could run the scam in a number of different states, but it was easiest and you could make the most money doing it in Minnesota. Additionally, at about this same time, the DHS investigators and BCA agents initiated an investigation of another child care center and found a high amount of billing fraud. Federal agents from the FBI, the IRS Criminal Investigation Unit, and agents from the U.S. Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General were invited to join in the investigation due to some of the unusual activity and suspected crimes that we believe we saw. This investigation resulted in the federal indictment in 2017 of the owner of Salama Child Care Center. That owner eventually pled guilty and was sentenced in 2018 to 2 years in prison and was ordered to pay restitution of over $1.4 million. The Salama Child Care Center was located at 1411 Nicollet Avenue in Minneapolis. That address might ring a bell for some of you because of a YouTube video taken last December at the Quality Leering Center, which was being operated.
Wait, are you guys kidding me? Is there no audio? There has got to be audio. Norma, you've got to be back early in the video. Please, people watching this video live, tell me that you can hear me right now, because there's definitely audio. Okay.
At the same address. By mid-2018, our cases had generated some publicity, and the legislature then directed the Office of Legislative Auditor to conduct a special review of the CCAP program. In August of 2018, as I was preparing answers to questions posed to me by the OLA in an email, I was told by a DHS official to submit my answers to them instead of sending them directly to the OLA. When I forwarded my answer regarding what fraud trends we were seeing in CCAP, as I had been directed, I soon had a senior DHS official in my office, angry, red-faced, and almost yelling. The senior DHS official told me to delete a number of paragraphs of the document that I had sent.
So essentially, he goes on to say that he was directed by members of the government to not only remove his research, proving the fraud that was going on, but also to cover it up. And what's incredibly interesting is that later in the communication that he has with members of the Minnesota State House is that he has all of these people's names. He knows exactly who they are, and he is going to be giving that information. He just didn't want to say it on the record in the hearing. I'm not exactly certain why he didn't want to say it on the record, but at the end of the day, these people are going to be handed over to law enforcement. And my only hope is that they will be prosecuted, because that's exactly what needs to happen. All right. Now, let us begin today's top story, discussing the continued prosecution of one James Comey. Now, James Comey's current charges are in North Carolina, and yesterday he surrendered himself in Virginia. It would appear that the Justice Department is pursuing additional charges against James Comey, this time for leaking classified information, which we know he did. In fact, James Comey's own emails show that he did. And the indictment that we have in North Carolina, 20 years in prison for the threats against President Trump, that is one front. As part of that criminal case, the government is seeking the forfeiture of all of Jim Comey's riches as a result of writing his latest book. If they are successful in the forfeiture of that money, it means he's not going to have the cash to support his defense. And if he doesn't have the money to support his defense, then the only thing that he's going to have the ability to do is to make a deal with the federal government, which we spoke about yesterday. That deal with the federal government becomes even more likely if they go after him for the leaking of classified information, because that is decades more in prison on top of the decades that he will already get for overtly threatening the life of the president of the United States. Now, I spoke about this with Adel and Frank on the program earlier on Taking It Back. And Adel made a great point. You know, the fact that this indictment dropped essentially immediately after we had a radical left-wing extremist attempt to assassinate President Trump and others in the administration during the course of the White House Correspondents' Dinner over the weekend. What James Comey did is use coded language to incite violence against the president of the United States. And then right before the indictment drops, we have what is leftist violence from somebody who is completely TDS suffering, brain worms afflicted, having been brainwashed by people like James Comey and by the mainstream media. So now federal prosecutors in the Eastern District of Virginia are moving forward with new criminal investigations. Although the first indictment is no longer in play, that was the indictment that was thrown out by a judge merely because he didn't like the way that Lindsay Halligan was appointed. That indictment can come back again in the future. This one is far more serious because, again, we have James Comey's own communications where he admits to this plot to release this classified information to the public. So this investigation, if you'll remember, is tied to his dissemination of documents through his butt boy, the Columbia law professor, Daniel Richman. And if it's successful, it's going to be the third time that Comey will have been indicted since last fall. Now, again, Todd Blanche, I think that there is no mistaking the connection between his presence at the helm of the DOJ and the speed with which all of these things are beginning to take place. I don't for any second think that Comey will be the last former administration official to be indicted along this path. I think that very soon we're going to have the indictments of John Brennan. And if you have even more people who get indicted for more serious things being brought forth in a RICO trial, in a grand conspiracy trial, then everybody is going to be playing with the Department of Justice to see who can speak first, because nobody is going to want to go down for anybody else. So it hasn't been decided if the Department of Justice is going to present an indictment to a grand jury in the Eastern District of Virginia. That's where Comey resides. Or if the case is going to be pursued in a different location, they could actually do it in Daniel Richman's home of New York, because that's where the actual classified data had been given out to the media. I don't know which one is going to be better, to be perfectly honest with you, but I think that they should, probably do They should probably do it wherever they're going to find the greatest success. And obviously, one of the things they've been doing over the course of the last year is investigating where that would probably be. So this classified information had initially been reviewed by the Eastern District of Virginia last year, but probably the reason that it didn't come about then is because there were still some holdouts at the EDVA U.S. Attorney's Office who didn't want to see James Comey get indicted at all. So they were putting pressure in terms of, slow rolling these investigations, not calling a grand jury, perhaps even hiding evidence. So I cannot wait to see James Comey get indicted for this stuff. President Trump has been calling Comey out as a leaker ever since that 2017 New York Times article came out with this classified information. And the case that Lindsay Halligan had tried to bring before, there was nothing wrong with that case. That case could just as easily be brought again. The one problem that I have seen is that we don't have a permanent U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia. So it remains to be seen how this is going to play out. But I cannot wait to see James Comey get indicted over and over and over again, because as long as we've been paying attention to this guy, there are adequate crimes that he can be tried for in various jurisdictions that could put him in prison for the rest of his life. And if they can bring them all in different places and do to him what they did to Trump, forcing him to go here one day and then down south another day, and then the same day go to a different jurisdiction because they're scheduling him all around the country, my friends, it will be beautiful. James Comey's first court appearance in North Carolina has also been scheduled. That is going to be, I believe, May 11th. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. All right. Now, before we continue, might as well mention this from our friends over on Rumble. This also has to do with Minnesota, so that makes sense. Also from Alpha News, you guys, just a quick word about the most important documentary that you're likely to watch in recent memory. It's called The Fall of Minneapolis. It was produced by Alpha News and the award-winning journalist Liz Collin, who does great work there. The film blows the lid off what really happened with George Floyd, the trial, the media lies, the police body cam footage that they never allowed anybody to see, and how an innocent city was burned while good cops got thrown under the bus. It's already been watched over 10 million times. It's been praised by people like Charlie Kirk, Megyn Kelly, Jack Posobiec, Dinesh D'Souza, Tim Pool, and many others. But the best part is it is 100% free right now. There's no subscription or paywall. You can watch it by going to thefallofminneapolis.com. You can also just search The Fall of Minneapolis on Rumble. You'll be able to find it there. If this film opens your eyes like it has for millions of people, you please consider a 100% tax-deductible donation. You can make that at alphanews.org so that they can help wake up even more Americans. You deserve the real story, so watch it tonight. Thank you very much to Alpha News. Okay. Jake Gigolo says, I watched it. It's good. All right. Now, moving back to the subject of potentially additional indictments. Yesterday, I commented on the strange timing of Anthony Fauci's 10-year preemptive pardon. And I wondered, back in 2014, what was it that Anthony Fauci was working on? Well, my friend Hans Mankey puts it together that the most copious detail has always been that date, 2014. Guess what? That just happens to coincide with Anthony Fauci approving funding that was routed through Peter Daszak, likely to be a co-conspirator yet to be indicted, for gain-of-function experiments on coronaviruses at the Wuhan lab. That would make so much sense why the Biden auto pen gave Dr. Fauci a 10-year pardon from 2014 to 2024. So the work that Anthony Fauci approved after it was discovered was paused because an NIH official flagged it as likely to be prohibited gain-of-function research. Now, we don't know what happened after that claim was made, but very quickly, Anthony Fauci restarted that funding under mysterious circumstances, and the restarting of that funding was actually acknowledged by Peter Daszak when he thanked the National Institutes of Health for restoring the funding after initially it was cut off. So Fauci actually went on to lie to Congress about it. That is a crime in and of itself. These are facts that have already been established. The only question is whether or not Fauci will be charged. I believe he should be charged. And I believe that the acceptability of that pardon is something that will undoubtedly need to be challenged in court. I've said this on a number of occasions, but if you are going to challenge those auto pen pardons as not real, basically, because President Trump has said that time and time again, a great place to begin is with Anthony Fauci, because you have, again, a decade of criminal actions that you can look to. You could also, again, charge Anthony Fauci under RICO statutes, because you have these overt acts that begin in 2014 with the funding of gain-of-function research on coronaviruses at the Wuhan laboratory leading up to the start of the pandemic, and all of the decisions that were made at the level of the highest levels of government in countries all around the world. So in order to determine whether or not these pardons have any validity at all, we're going to have to challenge them. Just if you want to see Anthony Fauci's full and unconditional pardon for any offenses against the United States, which he may have committed or taken part in during the period from January 1st, 2014 through the date of this pardon, arising from or in any manner related to his service as director of the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, as a member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, or the White House COVID-19 response team, or as chief medical advisor to the president. Now, besides the idea of a preemptive decade-long pardon, I don't know of any other instances other than from Joe Biden where pardons were given with such unconditional authority. The idea, and look, he started June 1st, with the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Diseases funding the risk of bat coronavirus emergence to Dr. Peter Daszak. So right here, dear Jenny, this is terrific. We are happy to hear that our gain of function research funding pause has been lifted. Now, how many times do you remember Dr. Anthony Fauci saying that the work Peter Daszak was doing was not gain of function, that it was something else because of, I don't know, the manner in which they were doing it? But Peter Daszak calls it gain of function research funding right here in the email where he's writing to Jenny Greer at the NIH and the NIAID. That is pretty damning right there. Dr. Fauci, do you still support funding of the NIH funding of the lab in Wuhan? Dr. Fauci said to Senator Paul, with all due respect, you are entirely and completely incorrect that the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. That's so funny, because that's exactly what Peter Daszak called it after Anthony Fauci funded it and then restarted that funding when somebody raised the alarm bells, because this gain-of-function research was totally illegal. Anyways, I think that Anthony Fauci is likely going to be indicted as well. All right. Now, we also have a new bit of information coming from the National Fraud Enforcement Division, that brand new section of the Department of Justice focusing explicitly on fraud. And this is going to be the Assistant Attorney General, Colin McDonald, talking about their efforts. They have not stopped. They have not paused. They are continuing full steam ahead. Now, remember, there was that doctor. Oh, shit. Oh, I forgot about the audio. Sorry, you guys.
We welcome all who share our concern for taxpayer dollars to join us in this mission. And I am pleased to announce today a major new fraud division initiative to combat healthcare fraud, the creation of the West Coast Healthcare Fraud Strike Force in Arizona, Nevada, and right here in the Northern District of California. The data shows that the need for this new strike force is urgent and undeniable. Healthcare fraud in these districts imposes an enormous and growing burden on American taxpayers as fraudsters exploit programs meant for the poor, needy, elderly, and disabled. Some of the most significant Medicaid, wound care, and digital health technology fraud cases have been prosecuted in these districts. This new regional strike force will be staffed by at least 10 prosecutors from the Fraud Division's Healthcare Fraud Section, who will be a force multiplier for these U.S. attorneys' offices to combat a healthcare fraud crisis that is robbing taxpayers and harming patients.
All right, so fraud is obviously in many more places than just California. If you'll remember, a couple of months ago, I brought you a story about a doctor who was living in Nevada, but his Medicaid information was being used at a whole bunch of different clinics throughout California. And when it was brought to his attention, he said, I'm not doing this. I'm not taking any of these patients. Somebody else is using my information. It was pretty quickly shut down. But the same problem that exists in California is going to be all over the Southwest. So now we're going to see more than likely quite a few raids happening in these areas as well. That is the best news that we could hope for. We also have an update coming from our friends over at Judicial Watch in Colorado. Thanks to a lawsuit brought by Judicial Watch, 372,000 inactive voters have now been removed from the Colorado voter rolls as part of their lawsuit and settlement with the state of Colorado. So very good news. Thank you very much to Sir Lurks-a-lot. Thank you for the ship, sir. And thank you for a phone. He says, but wait, there's more. Thank you to Luann V for a ship as well. She says, hi to you and Lisa. Please send some Florida weather to the Poconos. Oh, man, it has been not that great down here in Florida recently. We're finally just starting to get some rain, but yeah, it hasn't been all that great. Sir Lurks-a-lot also dropped a phone, says, see, there is more. I appreciate you, my friend. Filter Dog says, Nick Shirley recently said he's going to Maine next. Yes, he did. Sir Lurks-a-lot also just bought a 3-month bronze tier subscription. I love you, brother. Thank you so much for the generous support today. Sean Joe, thank you for the can, the cookie, and the can. Thank you for the cookie from Patriot Game. Thank you, Sean Joe, for another cookie. Thank you to Sir Lurks-a-lot for gifting Wild Dog USA 1 a 1-month subscription. Thank you again for dropping one for resonate432gmail.com. Appreciate you there. Thank you for giving one to Mona. Thank you for giving one to Good Dog 45 and another one to Inquisitive 01. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you to Sean Joe for 2 cookies. Thank you to Filter Dog, who says Oklahoma candidate found dead. Oh, you know what? I think I saw that he was missing earlier today. Let's take a look at that real briefly. Yes, he was missing. Okay, so Oklahoma State Senate candidate Barry Christian found dead after being reported missing. He's a 54-year-old Republican. He launched his bid for the Oklahoma Senate last year and received an endorsement from his friend Kid Rock. Christian was first reported missing when he didn't show up for a Tuesday meeting. Authorities later found his pickup truck in the Sandy Sanders Wildlife Management Area. His daughter, Brooklyn, has released a statement to KOCO saying her family doesn't know fully what happened. Please pray for, oh gosh, it looks like his truck is down in a canyon or something. Please pray for our friends and family. Our world is upside down right now. We are still not sure of everything that happened, so please act with grace and treat my dad's legacy with dignity. We are extremely grateful to everyone who assisted in the search efforts and to all of the media outlets that shared his information. I know there will be a lot of people devastated by his passing. Just days before he went missing, Christian attended the Magnum Rattlesnake Derby. Okay, let me try something here. Yeah, open video. Let's see if that works. Nope, that definitely did not work. Nope, that's not working either. Okay. I was trying to see if I could do something to fix the sound, but looks like it's not going to happen. Let me see. Nope. Yeah, I don't know what Rumble has done to change the way that they're bringing sound in. But yeah, let's take a look here. This is pretty remote, it would appear. And you've got, I think that this is his truck that went missing. And there's no sound here, everybody. So, but here is the ravine where it appears there is another vehicle down there. So maybe he was driving out here in the desert and he went down a ravine or something, but man, pretty awful stuff. So yeah, definitely pray for his family. All right. We also have new information released by Chuck Grassley in his continued efforts to expose abuses by the Biden regime. It would appear that the efforts of the DOJ and the FBI to go after traditional Catholics was even worse than previously discussed. These are now text messages that have been exposed by the Daily Wire, released by Chuck Grassley. And it shows that two of Jack Smith's prosecutors, Joseph Cooney and Molly Gaston, were exchanging text messages, and they apparently had some sort of fantasy about prosecuting Catholic nuns, which is just really, really odd. Why would you hate nuns so much that you want to go after them? I mean, what could nuns have really been doing? So either way, these communications obtained by Chuck Grassley specifically reference a New York Times photo of these nuns who attended the Stop the Steal rally. They were wearing traditional habits and veils, as well as big Trump scarves around their necks. I would like to take a special assignment of finding and prosecuting them, Gaston wrote to Cooney. I'm with you, responded Cooney, although I'd like to prosecute any nun who still wears the head habit. This process of going after Catholics was pretty widespread during Joe Biden's time in Washington. They weaponized the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, the FACE Act. That was the 1994 law that prohibits interfering with anyone obtaining or providing reproductive health services, which is code for baby murder, as a punishment for the Supreme Court's reversal of Roe v. Wade in June of 22. But the other thing is, and we've seen this since the Trump administration took over, the FACE Act also protects people who are looking to get help at birth, well, what do they call them? Pregnancy centers where people want to have babies. In 2022, the FBI warned against radical traditionalist Catholic ideology in a memo posted to undercoverdc.com. And that memo detailed how the FBI believed white supremacy was found in the home of Catholics who prefer Latin Mass. And it was Chris Wray's FBI who was found to be infiltrating Catholic parishes and engaging in outreach to Catholic leaders to spy on Americans who were practicing their faith. In January 2025, Gaston was fired by the Trump administration. Cooney, in February of 2021, submitted a proposal to the FBI to investigate President Trump and individuals within his orbit. He is currently running for Congress in Virginia. So I wanted to go check him out real quick. Joseph Cooney, Virginia. Let's see how he's doing in his race. J.P. Cooney for Congress. Here he is. Hey, he looks like a real piece of shit, doesn't he? And you're not going to be able to hear this. I just figured that out.
January 7th, 2021.
Oh, God. The first thing he does is invoke January 6th.
The Department of Justice launches its investigation into January 6th, ultimately leading to Donald Trump. August 8th, 2022, the FBI executes a search warrant at Mar-a-Lago and finds top secret documents that Donald Trump stole from the federal government.
Lies! All of it lies!
November 18th, 2022, back at the Department of Justice, Jack Smith is appointed special counsel to oversee the
Jack Smith improperly appointed special counsel. Remember that.
2 federal investigations. And that's when Jack Smith asked me to join his team as his top deputy and a lead prosecutor.
As his top blowjob boy.
I'm JP Cooney, and I had already taken on the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, Steve Bannon, and Peter Navarro.
Oh, man, he is definitely not the person that we want to see in Congress. Ooh. Oh, man, my skin is crawling. They do have no shame. You're right, Freya. Absolutely no shame. Let's see. I'd like to see how JP Cooney is doing in the polls. JP Cooney, Virginia polling. Okay. So, God, look at that gerrymandered district right there. The proposed congressional district. You've got Saddam Aslan Salim. Got J.P. Cooney. Got Dave Kennedy. These are all Democrats. Adele McClure. Joe Shazari. Wow, I guess they're only Democrats running in this district. Democrats line up. Virginia passes gerrymandered House map not so fast. Yeah, all right. Well, anyways, Virginia is in a bad way right now. Sorry for everybody who lives there. All right, now, BDR 1776 says, heading to my place in Sebastian on the 8th. Got any good places to eat only locals know about from away from tourists near or around Daytona? Gosh. Not really, because Lisa and I cook a lot. And, okay, I'll tell you one that I actually just discovered the other day, which is a little hole in the wall. It's called Alexander's. Quite literally the best steak that I've had in the area since we moved here 5 years ago. Alexander's, what is it? Alexander's Prime. It's in Ormond Beach, which is very close to Daytona. I would check out Alexander's, definitely. Surprisingly, the food here, I haven't found like all that many great places. Back up in Michigan, there were so many different hole-in-the-wall restaurants that I had discovered over the years. But yeah, I have not really found all that many places down here. But I will totally recommend Alexander's Prime in Ormond Beach. That was a great spot. All right, now, this is a shocking development, but the mayor of El Cajon, California, is actually suing the state of California because the sanctuary status of the state of California, obviously bad for the people of El Cajon, bad for the people of California in general, but it's also in violation of the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution. And this is something we've suggested the federal government should do, but it looks like local government is going to go there.
This might be one of the most important days of my life.
Standing outside City Hall, El Cajon Mayor Bill Wells and the America First Policy Institute announced their lawsuit against California Attorney General Rob Bonta.
To seek clarity on the precedence of law, what takes precedence, federal or state law?
At the center of the lawsuit is SB 54, the state law that prohibits local police from working with federal immigration enforcement. The plaintiffs argue federal law supersedes state policies and say California's current law is putting local police officers in a tough spot.
What law should our police officers follow? Should they follow the laws of the United States of America, or should they follow the laws of the state of California?
Just last year, El Cajon City Council voted to comply with federal immigration law to help remove those with violent criminal offenses, something state law already allows. Around the same time last year, city officials say Homeland Security asked a city council member if El Cajon police could help do welfare checks on children in the city on its behalf. After asking the state, the AG's office advised against doing so, citing SB 54, adding that the county already has a system in place to check the welfare of these children and protect their privacy.
I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was when the state said, no, you cannot do welfare checks on children.
All right. So, I was just thinking about this other restaurant, which is in St. Augustine, which we really liked. It's called River and Fort. I would say check out River and Fort, too, if you want to make it to St. Augustine. There's a lot of people in St. Augustine. Difficult to find hole-in-the-wall restaurants, but this was good. This was really good. All right, so I'm glad to see a challenge of this type actually being made. Perhaps, is considering the America First Policy Institute is involved, I think that they have a really good chance. There's also an opportunity for the DOJ to join as an intervener. They would obviously have a stake in this. Curtis says, Zach, what area of Michigan did you live? I'm up here for the Wixom Novi area on a work project. So I was right in the center of the state near East Lansing, Michigan State University. So you're going to be over on the east side of the state. Which wasn't far, about an hour away. All right. And, this is my buddy Luke Slywalker. No, this is not the same person that I knew. I was thinking Luke Sly Talker. Okay. Now, this is also local to me down here as well. Yeah, the audio's working over there on YouTube. I know everything is working now. It's just a matter of having to sort through the changes that they made to Rumble Studio to make it work. Because they change it and they don't tell you how they're going to change it. All right. One of the things that I like about Sheriff Grady Judd of Polk County is that he and his people routinely do these child sex abuse stings where they will lay traps for sex offenders to come and put themselves in a position so they can be arrested and then tried for these horrible, horrible crimes. Well, strangely enough, a widely known local, a 68-year-old man who's known as the Polk County Santa, has just been arrested. He's usually the guy who plays Santa in these Christmas parades in this area of Florida. He'll do events. He'll do photo shoots. He's been doing this for over a decade. But he was just arrested for allegedly trying to pay $200 to have sexual contact with a 13-year-old girl. What's most disturbing about it is that he's had access to kids for the last 10 years. And this entire time, it would appear that that was merely a ruse so that he could gain access to vulnerable people. His name is Thomas Allen Hicks, and he lives in Lakeland. He was one of just 19 other suspects taken into custody during Operation Child Protector 8. There's a lot of these operations. I'm sometimes shocked at just how many pedos live in the area surrounding Polk County. But this took place over several days. A number of agencies were involved, but it was led by the Polk County Sheriff's Office, and they were explicitly targeting these people who were trying to abuse minors. So Sheriff Grady Judd announced the arrest during a press conference, and as he is often to do, had quite a bit to say about it. So give me just a moment and I'll get this pulled up so you guys can hear Grady Judd introduce the Santa, the Polk County Santa.
Sexual proclivities to batter children and in fact travel to a location thinking he was going to have sex with a little girl. His name is Tom Hicks. He's 68 years old. He works for Tri-County, a mental health and drug addiction group in marketing. He's a preacher, I'm told, of 40 years. He is a professional Santa Claus. He is well regarded in the community. Detectives working the operation this last week showed me a photograph of his children sitting on Santa Claus's lap while he and his wife stood next to them. Thousands and thousands and thousands of children have sat on this guy's lap thinking he was
Well, thank God he's being exposed.
Santa Claus, when in fact what he was a child sex predator. So what did he do on this occasion? Our colleague from Marion County was the undercover and did a really remarkable job. He responded to an ad online and he said, hey, I'm looking to have sex with a 13-year-old child, a little girl. And he thought he was talking to the father of the child. He was talking to our undercover detective. And he said, I just want to have 1 hour's worth of sex and I'll pay $200. And then he asked the father, do you want to be in the room, or are you going to be in the room while I have sex with your daughter? And they said, no, not really. He said, well, don't worry. I'll be gentle. I'll be real gentle. I'm kind of old and I'll be really easy with her. Ladies and gentlemen,
God,
that's how dangerous these people are. So how about his criminal history? Zero criminal history. How about the remorse he showed when he was arrested? Zero remorse when he was arrested. The only thing he was concerned about was his reputation as Santa Claus.
Oh my God.
Interestingly enough, after our investigation's over with, we embed Chris Hansen, and you remember him from the old To Catch a Predator day. He has a program and he goes with undercovers across the nation. He was with us. Tom Hicks talked to Chris for 40 minutes.
Holy shit.
And told him some really remarkable things. Well, I understand Chris is supposed to be on Jesse Waters tonight, and he'll probably share more details with you there or either on True Blue.
My God. Well, I'm probably going to want to tune into that and see what this guy admitted to. I cannot believe that these people are able to just hide in society. You know, I'm never surprised anymore. I used to be shocked by this stuff when I started realizing just how pervasive this was in positions of trust. You have people who want to abuse kids who seek out employment in positions of trust, whether it's teachers, mental health advocates, politicians, you name it. They become employable in these positions because it gives them access to victims. Terrible, terrible stuff. All right, we're going to finish out with a little bit of news coming out of Texas. First of all, Attorney General Ken Paxton put out an announcement earlier today taking legal action as part of an investigation into 30 North Texas businesses. These were businesses that were suspected of engaging in H-1B visa fraud. So this is a issue of civil investigative demands to these 30 North Texas businesses. And the Attorney General announced that additional entities under investigation include TechPro IT LLC, Fame PBX LLC, First Ranking Technologies LLC, Qubits Tech Systems LLC, Blooming Clouds LLC, Virat Solutions Incorporated, Oak Technologies, TechPath, TechQuency LLC. These are companies that are suspected of engaging in fraudulent practices designed to exploit the H-1B visa program. Reports indicate that several of these entities have operated so-called ghost offices as a scheme in which businesses falsely represent active operations in order to sponsor foreign workers. If I'm not mistaken, this Qubits Tech Systems, that was the one that I showed you last week coming from Tyler Oliveira. Now, he says, I will not allow the H-1B program to be abused by bad actors seeking to use it as a loophole for allowing foreign nationals to invade Texas. My office will continue working to uncover and put an end to fraud within the H-1B program. As part of the investigation, Paxton is demanding documents identifying all employees working for these companies, records detailing the specific products or services provided, financial statements, and communications related to company operations for the business. This is a continuation of the Attorney General's sweeping investigation into H-1B abuse, and it has already included a number of other Texas businesses. They're actively investigating and going after these organizations criminally. Now, we also have an update on the so-called Muslim city that's been attempting to get built for quite some time. The East Plano Islamic community, also known as Epic City, now known as something entirely different, the Meadows, would feature 1,000 homes, a mosque, schools, and more. And a lot of people have been worried that this project would begin to allow a self-governance of this community and the imposition of Sharia law. So developers were initially this morning awarded a win in a Travis County courtroom where the judge ordered that the Texas state agency, the Texas Workforce Commission, must comply with the agreed upon terms of the developer. The Texas Workforce Commission had argued that the project was under investigation, and so they should not allow these things to happen. This development remains under active investigation with our federal partners at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and we're taking immediate steps to appeal the decision. Now, it didn't take long, and the state government of Texas did exactly that. Governor Abbott commented and said this erroneous ruling will be appealed, which will put an immediate halt to the court's decision. Also, this matter involving what is now called the Meadow is the subject of other legal actions and ongoing investigations. It is far from having any chance of moving forward. This is the judge, Judge Amy Meacham, undoubtedly a white liberal woman who made the decision earlier today. That appeal has already gone through. The decision has been stayed. Epic City or the Meadows or whatever you want to call it now is no closer to moving forward than it was earlier today. All right. Now, finally, a substitute teacher who branded herself $1 million prostitute, and I just want to make sure you guys realize that this is the woman self-identifying as $1 million prostitute. I don't know who's paying that much to sleep with her. But she just got fired because as she was substituting in Lake County, nonetheless, which is very close to Polk County, she was allegedly suffering a bizarre and disturbing meltdown as she was teaching in this high school classroom. Students said that she twerked, she made sexually explicit remarks, she called herself $1 million prostitute, and she physically grabbed a student by the neck before she was hauled away by deputies. Now, she's been identified as Angela Faith Jordan, substitute at Lake Mineola High School. And deputies responded after staff triggered an emergency alert around 10:20 a.m. They found Jordan yelling incoherently in front of students. Investigators say students reported Jordan had been slamming her hands on the desk, making obscene comments, and dancing provocatively in the classroom instead of teaching. Authorities also say she referred to herself as a $1 million prostitute. The most serious allegation came from the student who said that Jordan yelled at her, used a derogatory slur, and then placed her hand on the student's neck and then moved towards the throat area. Let's go ahead and watch the video. Okay, and I realized I need to make sure it's alone on screen for it to work. Okay.
Acting erratic inside of the classroom. I'm your community correspondent, Troy Campbell, and right now we're outside Lake Mineola High School, where a lot of people have raised concerns after seeing videos circulating online showing now former substitute Angela Jordan inside one of these classrooms on Monday. We sat down with the school board chair to ask them about this incident. We also asked the school district, how do they hire substitutes?
Okay, she's not going to answer. She needs to leave the premises.
The Lake County Sheriff's Office releasing this body camera video recorded from inside Lake Mineola High School on Monday. Investigators went on to note Jordan appeared to be suffering from a possible mental health episode.
I'm not a threat and I will not be killed when I'm with my head.
The Sheriff's Office says moments before, students inside the classroom say Jordan began acting erratically, slamming her hands, dancing inappropriately, made sexually suggestive comments, and even physically grabbed a student.
I was told immediately.
Lake County School Board Chair Bill Mathias says he's proud of how the students handled the situation.
That was very moving to me.
The teens
or actually
Right.
being sensitive to what appeared to be a mental health episode.
That's correct.
Investigators also say a search revealed a history of bipolar disorder.
Oh, there you
School
go.
board chair Matthias also says, thanks to the district's You Are Not Alone program, there is a mental health specialist at every high school in the district. He says that mental health specialist is also available for any staff and even substitutes. After Lake County said they terminated Jordan, we asked the district about how they hire substitutes. They provided this link to their website, which states an applicant must have at least a GED and pass a criminal background check. There's no mention of mental health history.
So it's always going to be an ongoing priority and challenge to recruit good quality subs in the district, because it's not always an easy feat to do.
It is not.
According to the incident report, Jordan wasn't arrested. Instead, she was cited with several misdemeanors, including simple battery and disrupting a school function.
That girl was clearly having a mental breakdown. I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, they said she has a history of bipolar disorder. I've known quite a few people who have bipolar disorder in my time, and you know, the people who have those sorts of things, if they don't stay reliantly on their medication, they tend to believe that they don't need to have it anymore, and then they do crazy things like this. You know, I had somebody try to kill me, a bipolar suffering individual literally tried to murder me because they were having a mental breakdown. So I've seen it firsthand. I know it's no laughing matter. So anyways, I'm surprised that they didn't commit her, because they can do that to you. And if you act like that at your job, then I think it's obvious you got a lot of problems, and we need to take care of that. All right, you guys, we're going to go ahead and call it there. I want to thank everybody for hanging out with us tonight. Please don't forget about all of the other sponsors of tonight's video. For the rest of the month, which is today, you guys can still take advantage of the buy one, get one free deal over on Oneness Drops, onenessdrops.com/promo/redpill78. You can get one free of everything you purchase. So if you order a chlorine dioxide water purification kit, they'll give you another one automatically. Same with the mullein extract, or with the soursop tincture, or the DMSO. Everything on their website. Through the link in the description, you will get a buy one, get one free. You got to make sure you use that link, because that's the way to get the deal. Also, my friend Mike Lindell at mypillow.com, when you use code RP78, you will get up to 80% off of everything Mike offers on the website. My good friend Jordan at consciousstrength.net, use code RP78 to make sure you get 10% off of all of those products. And don't forget about my friend Jessica over at goallgood.com/RP78. Of course, this is a 100%, all of these are Patriot-owned businesses, but Jessica focuses on natural, clean skincare, utilizing premium and purposeful ingredients like 100% grass-fed and finished beef tallow. They offer moisturizers, face balms, tallow sunscreen, smoothing serums, a whole bunch of hair care products as well. Definitely check Jessica and goallgood.com out. And also, finally, my friends over at Tamarack Gardens.
Your body doesn't need more synthetic fixes. It needs real plant medicine. Wild herbs are packed with minerals, adaptogens, and healing compounds your body actually recognizes and can use, supporting energy, immunity, and balance from the inside out. At Tamarack Garden, our supplements bring these overlooked weeds and wildflowers back into your daily routine. Don't just manage symptoms, support your body and eat your weeds. Head to tamarackgarden.com for $10 off your order of $50 or more when you use code RP78 at checkout.
Thanks again to the people at Tamarack Garden. Also, thank you so much to Sean Joe for 2 cookies. Thank you to Filter Dog for the cookie. Thank you to Good Dog 45 for the can, and Sean Joe for 2 more cookies, as well as Curtis. Thank you again for the Michigan comment. And then Teresa Picano. Guys, I got a reply from my ex-post to Rumble about the ads covering the chat screen. He said I will look into it. I posted screenshots. Thank you, Zach. Awesome. Hopefully that takes care of it. That's it. Muffins at the door barking. I got to go. I'm here alone. Good luck. God bless. I'll see you guys tomorrow at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Peace. You know what's wild to me is that you guys can hear the intro and the outro music, but then when I have everything playing exactly the same through my browser, you can't hear the stuff coming through the browser. I don't know what the hell the problem is. Oh, yeah. Here come the gold pills. Don't forget to hit that like button. Hit the thumbs up. Hit the red pill, whatever it might be. No, I don't think it's anything to do with my browser. Because it updates automatically and there's no updates available. It's something to do with Rumble Studio. They just changed something. They also included a thing so that I can have people call in so I don't have to use Zoom or any of that stuff, which is kind of cool. It's going to save me a couple of $100 a year. Yeah, there's no update on any of my software, my computer, my soundboard. All right, this is it.